Hello, welcome to the Creative Chicken. Today I'm working in my Square Dilutions art journal. I'm beginning by prepping my page by giving it a good coat of Pepio white gesso. Once my page is completely covered, I'll dry it off with my heat tool. I'm going to be using iZink pigments from Alidine with Seth Apter today. These come in a fabulous range of 20 colours, including 3 metallics and a pearlescent. Colour I'm using is olive drab, giving it a good shake. As you can see, they come with a little brush like a nail varnish, but I'm not using the brush here. I'm just going to pour a very small amount onto my page. You'll be amazed at how far these pigments actually go. Make sure you wipe the top of your bottle before putting the lid on. You don't want it to clog up and seal. Next, I'm going to a little spritz of water onto my ink, and then using a plastic palette knife, I'm just spreading the ink across my page. I found plastic palette knife works better with these than a metal one because there's a little bit more give and you can spread your inks around a bit better. Next I'm going in with the burnt orange pigment straight on top of the olive drab. I haven't worried too much about making sure that the olive drab was dry. They do dry pretty quickly, these pigments, but I don't mind if they blend together, so I didn't worry about using a heat tool to dry them off. As you can see, the more that you spread the colour out, the less intense the colour, and it becomes translucent, so the colours below will show through, albeit tinged with the shade of the colour on top. At this point I decided I wanted to start mark making, so just taking the end of my spatula I started creating some scratches onto the pigment. The next colour I brought in was Atlantis, which is a lovely petrol bluey green shade, and I did exactly the same as I had with the previous 2 colours. When I set out with this piece of work, I decided I wanted to use colours that I wouldn't normally go for, hence the orange and the green, but I can't stay away from blue, therefore Atlantis was added. Again, I went in with my spatula and created some scratchy marks across the surface. To warm the page up a little bit, I went in with rose chestnut pigment next. And as you can tell by now, using these pigments, it's all about layering and layering and layering. I then decided to try taking a little bit of the pigment back by dabbing it with a kitchen towel, but because it dries so quick, this really wasn't effective. So next I went in with Wet Meadow, a lovely vibrant green colour. Did exactly the same, quick spritz of water, spread it across my page. And at this point I was really getting happy with the way the layers were building up, and I was seeing all those different tones and shades of colours coming through. For the next layer, I decided to go back to blue, and this time I picked up the ultramarine, which is an absolutely fabulous shade of blue. Now at this point I wanted to make things look a little bit grungier, so I took a damp baby wipe and started rubbing back some of the colours to reveal the colours underneath. It is important here to squeeze out your baby wipe in a kitchen towel to remove most of the excess moisture before you do this. At this point I went back to the Atlantis pigment I'd used previously, put a little bit on my page. Then I used my palette knife to make more marks across the page and drag the Atlantis pigment over it, and as you can see it just made those marks stand out. So I just carried on doing a little bit of mark making on my page. I then went with the Mimosa, a lovely bright yellow. Again, using it neat, I used my palette knife to pull the pigment across into some of the marks I had just made on my page. Next, to balance the orange in the background with the foreground, I just put on a little bit more of the bright burnt orange colour and spread that across the page before finally drying the whole page with my heat tool. Once the page was completely dry, I decided to stamp some texture into the background using my Stazon ink pad. I think the stamp's just from an old Christmas Stampers Anonymous set by Holtz, but it was almost a cracked ice effect, which I thought would be quite nice on this page. Using the iZink pigment in Avalanche and using the little brush that comes with it, I just drew 2 rough circles onto my page in the area where I knew I was going to put my focal point. I then pulled those across the page with my plastic spatula. I then repeated the process using the Mimosa yellow. Next up, I went back to my burnt orange and applied a few dots onto my page. Again, just using the little brush in the lid of the pigments, and with the spatula started pulling those across the page again. I then applied a few dots with the Atlantis pigment in the same way, but this time I wanted to try and create a mark from the circle of the dots. So I picked up my heat tool and just gave them a very quick blast, only a second or two, and then pulled across, and you could actually see a little white circle where the original dot of ink had been. So I repeated this in a few different places. Next, I went back to the olive drab and repeated the process again, putting the dots slightly to the side of where I'd originally put the blue ones. Quick blast with the heat tool and then back to the spatula to spread the dots out. So at this point, I had a little think, a little look at my page, and I decided that actually most of the background was finished, so I gave it a good dry off with my heat tool. For my focal point, I decided to use a Tim Holtz stamp, which comes from Stampers Anonymous. So I inked it up with my Stazon in black, made sure I had some flat surface under my page, and stamped down onto the background. And I quickly heat set that stamp using my heat tool. I then stamped the little flourish in the top corner just to balance the page using Stazon. This stamp comes from one of my early indigo blue sets, but I think you can still get it if you have a look on my website. The next step, I used iZink Ice in blackcurrant purple. This is a translucent gel or a glaze which is produced by Alidine in France with Seth Apter. It's a very strong purple when it's thick, but as you spread it out it becomes softer, so you just get a hint of that purple, and as it goes over the top of the other pigments you see all your colours shift just a little bit. And as you can see, when the light hits it there, you get the glaze effect. I then took my spatula and started creating more marks in the glaze. Because the glaze is a little thicker than the pigment, it's really good for making scratches and marks in. The next of the iZink ices I picked up was in Polar Pink, which I must admit isn't a colour I would normally go to. These ices do dry pretty quickly, so I didn't have to bother drying off my page with my heat tool. Now, as you can see, as you scrape the Polar Pink across, it turns from that really vibrant pink to a much more subtle pink. I made sure I scraped some of the Polar Pink into some of the marks I had just made in the previous glaze, so that I would get little hints of pink in those scratches. I then added some more of the iZink ice, this time in Glacier Blue. Now, if you've watched any of my other videos, you'll know I do like a good splatter, so I went back to my pigments and picked up the Avalanche White and just gently splattered it onto my page. Then I repeated the splattering, but this time with the pigment in the black After Dark shade. And once I was happy with all of my splattering, I made sure I dried the page off fully using my heat tool. I like to add a sentiment to my page, so this time I reached for my clippings, which are a set of stickers from Tim Holtz. And if I lift my book up to the light, you can see how the glaze, when it's dried, gives you that lovely glazed effect. I really do like this product. I think it's become one of my favourites. I felt at this point I needed some kind of a border to draw the eye into the page, so I picked up my aquarellable pencil from Stabilo and just quickly sketched a line all around the edge of the page. Then picked up a wet paintbrush and took that over the top of the pencil mark. That releases the pigment and gives you this lovely black water marky line around the edge. Once I was happy with the border, I decided that I wanted this saying to stand out a little bit more, so I took my aquarellable pencil again, scribbled a line around there, went around with a wet brush and made that stand out a little bit too. And that's the page finished. I hope you've enjoyed this craft along with the Creative Chicken. Please give us a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel, and don't forget you can buy your supplies at www.thecreativechicken.co.uk. Bye!